everybody, Jed with Skookumart here. I hope everybody's doing well. So today I wanted to give you a little overview of how our signs are rendered in our game and how they go from just a file to be loaded in the scene, how it's structured, and then how it's eventually rendered into the backgrounds. So it all starts with our level files. So our level files are just plain text files, and they're plain text because it just helps us for debugging and whatnot. This is kind of our own format. Each of the individual entities or props are organized in the file, so they have this like header that indicates what type of prop they are. It also gives them like a unique ID, and then it gives them other properties like position and whatnot, or whatever type of properties an individual prop would have. So some of these have a lot more properties than others, but it loads the file, and then let me load up a level here. So as soon as the game starts, it loads up the scenes, and one of these scenes in particular, which I talked about in a previous video, basically contains everything that's dynamic. And in this scene, it has these kind of like templates. These are just placeholders that indicate where a level is and what the name of the level would be. So this level, for instance, actually let's spawn at that level. So that level, it has a particular position, which is right here, and it has a name. And once the game starts, it searches for that file with the appropriate name, and then it loads it. And what is actually a little odd is how the levels are loaded, which is all of our levels are actually out here in the middle of nowhere. So what you actually play with is down here, and those are kind of representations of the actual level, which is up here. And we do it this way because it gives us a lot of kind of customization. So the levels are made up of these individual components. So there's like a sign corner, here's an edge of the sign, here's a door. The player is actually 3D mesh too, and then we can do things like we can give it some depth. So as you see, like all the like edges and corners of the sign are actually in a different Z depth. And then from there, every single sign has an orthographic camera that renders it. So the camera size is determined by the bounds of the sign that it's rendering. So we calculate the bounds of the sign, and then when this level is loaded, and this sign in particular, then the camera's created, all of the individual props are placed here, the camera's size to the particular size that it needs, the depth is set and everything. And then what the camera actually does is it renders to a render texture, which is basically just a texture on the GPU, and it renders the sign with just a blue background. One of the kind of odd things is we have our signs with these red, green, and blue colors, and the reason we do that is so that we can kind of isolate a particular feature of the sign, and then in a shader down in the actual scene, which I'll show you here in a second, it can then be kind of pulled out, and we can do different things to those aspects of the sign. So if I zip down here to the sign, then you'll see that what we do is we have each of these quads that represent the level have a shader that is pulling that render texture. And each of these signs, their shader is taking the green color and it's turning it to black. It's taking the red color, it's turning it to yellow. And then anything that's blue is actually transparent. So it's actually cut out in this case. And then this also affords us, doing it this way where we have the level rendered off in the middle of nowhere, and then we have the actual sign that you play with over here, it gives us the ability to do some extra little things to give the signs a little more detail. So in the same shader, we are also kind of overlaying an additional albedo texture. So this just gives it, on these signs which are in the factory, we can give the signs a little more dirt and scratches. And then we also have a metallic map that kind of grabs the light, and it makes it look like the paint may be scratched off or something like that. So one of the other things is that every single sign here has a custom quad to it. So we can then kind of give the signs an extra little bit of detail by giving the signs a bend or a twist, or maybe even like potentially a sign would be like the corner would be cut off or something. Because really, if you're in the factory here, the signs will probably not be pristine. They'd probably have some dings and stuff. And so a good example is one of our levels here. And we definitely want to do this more. A lot of our signs don't really have that. They don't have dings and dents and stuff, but we're definitely going to do that more. So I think this level kind of shows it off well. Yeah. So in this one, we've taken that quad, which is actually, the quads for the signs are actually generated in Unity. So what we do is when you're in the scene, we have these buttons here that basically generate the quad as an OBJ, saves it to the project with a particular name that corresponds with the level that it's in. And then from there, what we can do is we can take this OBJ file, open it up in Blender, and we can, in the case of this sign, we can take the corner, we can cut the corner, and then we can bend it, and then we can just resave it. And then when the level loads again, it pulls this mesh from the scene, it loads it up, it assigns it, and then it gives us that cool bent corner on the sign. One of the things that's kind of interesting is, let's load back into that other level that we had. So if I go into puzzle mode here and connect these signs, and so all of these signs are actually stationary. They don't move. And that kind of simplifies some things in terms of having the colliders. Most of them can be static and stuff. So it's more optimized, and it makes it a lot easier. But as you walk through these signs, the player is actually just teleporting from one sign to another. So as you change, or as you transition from one sign to another, this has like a particular percentage assigned to it. And then across, like, I think the first 20% of your transition, it just interpolates the player out the door. So you'll see that the player here, as I move back and forth, he goes a little bit over here, and then he just disappears, and then teleports down here, and then he'll continue on and then pop out the door. So I thought that was kind of a cool little trick. And then, you know, in the scene, it looks pretty seamless, or at least I'm trying to make it seamless. So yeah, that's kind of the overview of how our signs go from, you know, file to being organized here in scenes, being rendered to a texture. Then they're taken from that texture, assigned to a material. Then they're being rendered on a custom mesh in the scene with that material. Oh, actually, let me show you one more thing. One of the cool things that we can do, because our signs are rendered with just a texture and a quad in the scene, we can do some interesting things. And because they have this particular layout where they have red and green and blue in the texture, we can then isolate that texture and do some interesting things. So in this scenario, and this, we haven't quite developed this yet because it still looks a little crummy, but if you look at it, we actually have the yellow part of the sign in this case is actually transparent. So we can go in here and we can take the yellow color and we can make it transparent. We can take its alpha down. The alpha of this yellow color, boom, is just taken down, and then when it's taken all the way down, then it's actually just cut out of the sign and you don't see it anymore. And the other thing is, like, we can change, you know, on the fly, we can just change this to white or whatever we want. So, okay, cool. So I hope you enjoyed that little sneak peek, little overview of how our signs are rendered. If you have any questions or anything, definitely don't hesitate to leave a comment. Also, if you want to get more informed of what we're doing and how we're doing and everything, definitely follow us on social media. Or if you enjoy these videos, definitely subscribe to our channel. I hope you all have a good day, and I'll see you next time.